So someone wrote in and said, my fiancé feels like he's a great lover, but ... He could use a bit of help in revving up my engine. How do I teach him how to do that without making him feel like he's not a great lover? This is Reid Mihalko from readaboutsex.com.
I am Reid Mihalko. This is the voice of Reid Mihalko.
And I'm Cathy Martelli from theintimacydojo.com.
Hello, Cathy.
You're going to do the deep...
We're going to use the deep radio announcer voice today. Perhaps using a deep radio announcer voice, along with the word fiancé, will rev your partner up. But maybe not. What advice do you have, Cathy?
One thing you could do, a thought that I had was, if it's something that the two of you might do, is like, say, I'd love to try some new things. Let's take a class together. Mm-hmm. Let's discover, let's explore. Reid talks about a lot in his classes on relationships and sex about having exploratory nights where you just like, let's try out new things. Mm-hmm. So it's not that you have to say, oh, that really sucks, but it's like, also like, okay, this really feels good. And let's explore new things. Let's watch some videos together, or let's go to a class where they talk about different kinds of touch. Mm-hmm. One of the things I noticed myself, I'm very kinesthetic, and I love touch, but if someone's not present with their fingertips, if they're just kind of mindlessly, yeah, exactly, just like that.
You feel revved up yet?
No, I feel the opposite of revved up. It doesn't help. But if someone, you actually teach this a lot, like putting their awareness in their fingertips, mm-hmm. and then just letting their fingers feel and enjoy the sensation. So often we'll try to please the other person, and when we're doing that, we're not really paying attention to the sensation or energy mm-hmm. going back and forth. So maybe doing some of that. And what thoughts do you have?
I'm gonna. My question is about the ... Right? It's like, it feels like my fiancé feels that he's a great lover, but ... So the next piece is he needs help revving up my engine. So my questions are working backwards. When you are revved up, is your fiancé actually a good lover? Like, is this a problem about arousal? Or is it about technique? Or when you're super aroused, who gives a flying fuck about technique?
Or maybe you need some more time?
Yeah. So again, it's like, when you're really aroused with your fiancé, how's the sex? And then kind of working backwards from there, because a lot of people have never really, no one's nerded out, like, not no one, but most people haven't really been taught about arousal. Yeah. And so what ends up happening is these transformative, oh my God, that was the hottest sex I've ever had, are these moments where just a bunch of stuff happens and it feels like luck. Where if you were able to parse it out and look at it from a couple of different angles, there are some things that you might discover about yourself and your fiancé discovers about themselves, where you're like, oh, wait a minute, these are all ingredients to making this really great cake of sexuality, right? And that rises because the oven's just the right temperature. And then it's delicious with this kind of frosting on it. I don't know why we got on cakes. But because it's fiancé, it's French. We should be eating crepes. But the idea being, if you are sufficiently aroused, then the sex is better. So now we can be like, oh, let's nerd out on how you can be more aroused. And there's so many different ways to look at that. Jaya does a really great thing about erotic blueprints. And for some people, what gets them turned on? For some people, it's very like touch and sensuality. For other people, it's like it's this erotic kind of kinky thing. So transgression and whatnot is the way to get into their bodies, because you turn their brain on.
Tell them a story or
and other
sex
people,
some naughty things.
Yeah, and other people, kinky might be it's not leather and whips, but it's like rose petals and bindis and sacred sexuality, right? And moving energy up your spine, and like that gets like there's so many different ways to get into yourself and for your partners to help you get into your own body. For other people, it's like, oh my God, what's the turn on is to see my partner like not be able to control themselves because they're just seething with lust and they lose it, and like that's the turn on. Whereas other people be like, no, that was weird. That's a scary face.
Scary. Slow down.
Like slow down. So when you start to kind of parse out those pieces of yourself and your partner's pieces, now you can start to mix them. And some people, what's going on is the sex is just bad because the technique's all off. And so even if you were aroused, you know, the sex is mediocre. And what we think is, well, if I was just more turned on, the sex would be better. Maybe, but start like looking at what's actually working and what's not working, and understand that most people haven't had enough geeking out on this stuff to even know where to begin. It'd be like you've got, you know, back to the oven. You have to, you know, Reid, take apart the oven. And I'm like, okay, I've got screwdrivers and wrenches. I can take the oven apart, but that doesn't mean I know how to make it work
or put it back together
or what to fix.
Yeah.
So this is where Cathy's advice is: go take workshops, nerd out with people, read books together, like make shared projects of discovering these pieces for yourselves. And I will also add in, nerd out on your own about yourself and about sex in general. Because the other slippery slope that's tricky is when you have, when your arousal then becomes your fiancé's purview, and there's so much that we all have about our own choices and our own arousal and how we can take what we can give ourselves and bring that into the bedroom. And again, like, what works best is when everybody can do that. You know yourself really well, your partner knows themselves really well, you know each other really well, and then you can kind of mix it all together.
So we come back and talk about that in another video?
I think that's a wise move. More ovens and cakes in our next video.
Dot, dot, dot.
Dot, dot, dot.
Leave comments below. We'd love to know what you think.